Today we are going to discuss the E. coli outbreak in romaine lettuce that originated off of farms in California. It all started this past fall when there were 62 reports of illnesses in 16 states. 25 of those were hospitalized, and 2 of the cases were characterized as hemolytic uremic syndrome. So, what causes hemolytic uremic syndrome? Well, the strain of E. coli O157H7. E. coli O157H7 can bring you here because of the Shiga toxin produced by the bacteria. Symptoms for this foodborne illness include nausea, vomiting, and fever. In extreme cases, kidney failure can be seen when evaluating hemolytic uremic syndrome. So where did this particular strain come from? The E. coli strain originated from romaine lettuce farms in California. The FDA determined that many of the farms had several factors that potentially led to the contamination of the lettuce. Some of the contributing factors include poor hygiene, employee health, animal intrusion, and improper farm management. So then how do lettuce farms and packaging factories control the contamination of their products from bacteria? While no standard unanimous set of practices exist among those involved in the harvest and handling of lettuce, the Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, encourages the implementation of certain hygiene and sanitation techniques to prevent the spread of microbes on this produce. The primary factor that must be controlled in the production of lettuce is the source of water used for irrigation. The last E. coli outbreak in lettuce could have been prevented if the following measures had been taken: ensuring a safe quantity of microbes in the water supply through periodic examinations, or evaluating the source of water used in irrigation and cooling procedures to minimize the spread of human pathogens from the pipes, and lastly, controlling the contact of human pathogens found in soil from the runoff water supply. Flooding is also a problem related to the water management of agricultural crops. Thus, according to FDA standards, all produce that has come in contact with floodwater must be selected and destroyed. The soil itself is also another element that requires heavy regulation and includes prevention measures such as eliminating the use of raw animal manure, monitoring the time and temperature of the composting process, and separating equipment used to amend soil and harvest to avoid cross-contamination. Lastly, you can also limit the contact of potential wind-dispersed pathogens that may contaminate the soil. Apart from environmental factors, controlling the use of equipment used in the harvest and transportation of lettuce is another main focus of the FDA. So in order to combat this, some recommendations include facilitating the sanitation of equipment and tools used to collect the produce, reducing the microbial contamination of transport and packaging machines, and opting for the single-use container linings. Implementing safe storage of tools and preventing workers from bringing equipment home can also be a great recommendation to use in fighting E. coli. Providing training to workers in the fields and establishing good hygiene measures such as hand washing, glove use, abstaining from eating, drinking, or smoking, and using exclusively certain latrines strategically positioned in the field. Finally, the control of wildlife and pests around the crops is vital to safeguard the produce from pathogens. The regulations include, but are not limited to, the considerations of land previously used to livestock feeding, monitoring wildlife activity in nearby surroundings, and also taking into account the field's proximity to open land. Lastly, the training of workers to recognize and report the presence of fecal matter, infestations, and other signs of wildlife are important as well. Keep in mind that all of these are recommendations and not necessarily mandatory regulations by the FDA, which is why some of these problems arise. So how does the CDC find out when such outbreaks occur, and how can they identify the specific strain? In order to discover the origin of the E. coli outbreak in romaine lettuce, the CDC conducted numerous surveys of people that fell ill after consuming the lettuce. The FDA worked alongside the CDC to identify the specific strain by investigating various farms and cooling facilities in California. Once water and sediment samples were analyzed, the CDC was able to conclude that the outbreak strain of E. coli was known as E. coli O157H7. This particular strain was found in a farm's agricultural water reserve, or water reservoir. In order to confirm these results, the CDC used whole genome sequencing methods to demonstrate that the E. coli O157H7 strain was also isolated from individuals that were ill after consuming romaine lettuce. After researching, our group concluded that the CDC was relatively effective, but not the fastest, since 16 people in 16 states were infected over the course of 3 months before the outbreak officially ended. Although there were no deaths that were reported, many people were still hospitalized and experienced a kidney failure. However, the CDC was able to identify the particular strain. So lastly, according to the CDC, they did expect the illnesses to be reported 2 to 3 weeks after a person gets sick. So we highly recommend following the different recommendations that the CDC has provided, and also be on the lookout on their website for other outbreaks that may break out. Thank you for listening, and hope you stay safe.